Have you ever considered the power of hope? What's up, guys? Alfonso here. Here we are to do a breakdown and review of chapter 404 of My Hero Academia, which is known as We Love You, All Might. And this is a chapter, I mean, I will admit, it is not one of my and it's not even a bad thing, right? I'm saying it's not one of my favorites just because it's relatively short. It's kind of, I get it. There are things that have been set up within the narrative that make this chapter make 100 million, billion, trillion, quintillion, omnillion, nonillion, octillion. I think I already said that. Levels of sense. But it's just like, I don't know. For how important of a chapter this is, it feels a little underwhelming, if you know what I mean. And if you don't know what I mean, guess what? You're here to find out exactly what I mean. So let's not waste any more time. Editing me, I summon you to this plane of reality. Get ready. 3, 2, 1, go. What's up, guys? Alfonso here. Fun fact. I do in fact have it on me and keep it on me at all times. And another fun fact, All For One has it on him and he's keeping it on him at all times. But you see, when I have it on me, I'm typically talking in reference to my sword. And when I unsheath it, it's still technically in perfect harmony. When All For One's about to unsheath his sword, it's going to be All Might's spine from his lower body. But with that being the case, we open up and we do get to see the ever fateful flashback, right? This is the flashback that's kind of been guiding a lot of All Might's journey. It's been not necessarily guiding. Guiding is a wrong word. I think it's been like underlining a lot of All Might's journey, right? This is the flashback from years ago, literally years ago in his time, maybe even decades ago in his time, and years ago in our time. Because remember, this quote first came out around the Overhaul arc, which finished its weekly serialization like 5 years ago at this point. I think the Overhaul arc ended in like the 200s. Not even. I think it ended in like the late 100s. So this quote has been with the fandom and been with the manga readers and been in the manga for years now. This is the quote that's been undercutting the entire journey of All Might. It's been one of the biggest reasons why a lot of people have been waiting, itching, scratching for All Might to meet his ever-present end, because it was destined, as it says. What's a Night-Eye voice? You'll encounter with another villain. What awaits you then is an unspeakably gruesome end. It seems like it's a destiny. And how can you fight fate itself? How can you fight the future? It's literally impossible. It was foreseen. But of course, this is My Hero Academia, where the will of those who love, especially those who love him, may change the bounds of fate itself. However, we do get to see that ultimately it is going to look a little bit down and devious right now. All For One, he's looking a little bit too joyous as he has All Might over his head. I'm not sure how tall All For One is, but remember, All Might is like 7'3". Like, bro's a tall dude. Shout outs to All For One with his little 10-year-old body being able to just host him up over his head. I get it. He has like a million, billion, trillion, quintillion, non-million super strength quirks. Like that's kind of how it be. But still, it's very impressive that he just has him hoisted overhead. And one thing I do want to mention, because I'm consistently 100%, 1,000,000%, 1,000,000,000% glazing Horikoshi's art, as is the law of nature. As a guy with a pencil myself, I can't help it. I gotta glaze Hori. This is one of the ugliest images I've seen from him. And not even like it's drawn poorly. Well, for Hori, it kind of is drawn poorly. Like it's just a weird image. Like, don't get me wrong, there's still Hori's trademark detail in this image. Like, if there's one thing Hori will get you on, and it's one thing that I never, ever, ever will be, I will never give shame to the My Hero Academia anime. Because it is literally impossible to animate this. It's the same reason why you never heard me critique the Record of Ragnarok manga anime adaptation, because it's literally impossible. The amount of detail that Hori stuffs in a lot of his things, it's nigh on impossible to replicate in animation. Like, it is actually insane. But like there is the trademark detail, right? There's the fading of All for One's cloak into the more crosshatch style. There's the different detail on All Might's pants. There's the emphasis on his wounds. There's even the detail on the raindrops and the broken pieces of his armor that fall from his hand. Like there's all that detail, but something about it, right? It doesn't feel as clean as a lot of Hori's art is. Like it just seems very first pass, if you know what I'm talking about. Like it feels like he sketched this up, threw it to one of his assistants. His assistants were like, whatever. And then they did the line art. And then he passed to the next assistant who did the coloring and stuff like that. Though, admittedly, one thing I will have to give the artistic critique here, I do think it's purposeful, right? Like, I think this isn't supposed to look pretty. Like, I know it's a weird thing, right? It may just be like, pencil down. Don't be giving excuses now. But, like, look at the nature of the line art here. This is kind of what sells it for me. If this was the only panel here, like, say this was the opening page itself. Like, it was just a full page, and it looked like this. And then maybe I'd be like, wait a minute, Hori. Were you rushing? Were you gassing through it? But look at the, like, unstable nature, the sketchy nature of All Might here, too. This is meant to be, like, an unstable moment. And it is, literally, within the context of the narrative, within the context of the My Hero Academia timeline. This is an unstable moment. This isn't a moment that's locked in time or anything. This whole chapter is about the instability of this moment. And how maybe in one world, this did end up with All Might, like, broken just like the bat. But instead of how Bruce Wayne could get back up, All Might was getting put 6 feet under. So I do want to excuse it, especially since Hori's a good mangaka. He knows the principles of the importance of the beginning and the importance of the end, whether it be the story itself or just a chapter. He opened up this way with purpose. This more chaotic, sketchy art style, I think it's purposeful, especially since it does not appear later on the entire rest of the chapter. The rest of the chapter has Hori's trademark polish. So I do think this sort of ugly-esque, I don't even think it's not ugly. Like, this is still better than 99% of mangakas out there. It's just to Hori standards. Once again, with the current state of Shonen Jump, the only mangaka I can compare Hori to is himself and the Dan mangaka. But I haven't properly read that yet. I've just seen images from it. So, like, he's the main guy I gotta compare himself to. And this does not feel up to his standard, but it feels purposefully not up to his standard. Like, look at this. This doesn't even look like it was inked properly. Like, this looks like he quickly cross-hatch sketched this and then was like, yeah, whatever, throw it out there. So I do think it's purposeful because Hori's smarter than that. So I'm gonna give the critique so I don't just appear like a constant Hori glazer, because I know that's how I've been coming off these past couple chapters. And I'm gonna glaze him again. I'm gonna glaze his art in like 5 seconds. But there are some critiques. But with that being the case, we see the wind blows. And like, once again, the ugliness of this scene is contrasted by the beauty of this water. Like, dog. He knows what he's doing. That's a man who knows what he's doing. The wind blows. And we see that all around the world, there are many different reactions to the current state of things. We see this man. I have no idea who this fellow is, but that's kind of the point. This man could be a can of paint for all. A talking can of paint. Literally within the world of My Hero Academia, he could actually be a talking can of paint. But we see, in reference to something that gets highlighted later, just him being a little chilly out in the cold. He lets out some air and raises his fist. We see a guy chilling like a villain in his little laboratory, not doing anything, not saying much. We see people here in some part of the world, most likely not Japan. Most likely not Japan. Maybe on the other side of the sea, maybe across the Pacific. This boss is like, instead of worrying about far off dangers, you should worry about your deadlines. And I mean, I get it, but like, in context of the verse, that statement makes no sense. Like, especially if they are from across the pond, or I guess across the lake is the case of the Pacific Ocean. Like, your strongest hero went over there and got not low diffed. As far as they know, Stars and Stripes got cooked by Shigaraki. Like, All Might's gone. The strongest symbol of peace is gone. Like, I get the deadlines are important. Trust me, I understand the importance of projects and deadlines and keeping things up to a certain standard on time. I'm a full-grown adult working a full-time job. If there's one thing that does matter, it's deadlines. But like, dog, imagine worrying about deadlines when literally the next day, if everything fails, if All Might fail, well, maybe I've already kind of failed. If Japan fails and falls, literally the entire world is going to change fundamentally. The whole thing is going to change fundamentally. You won't have to worry about deadlines because you'll all be lined up. Yeah. So like, dog, I get it, but this is like a world concerning matter. I can't think of a comparison because there's no living being that's an equivalent to Shigaraki in our world. But like, imagine if a nuclear reactor just like woke up and started walking around somehow. Like, just a nuclear reactor got a sentient personality. It was like, yeah, you know what? Human race, why don't we just make them not anymore and just start strolling through the city? Like, obviously, sure, you would hope and have faith that whoever made the nuclear reactor could go and deal with it, go stop it. But like, you'd also be a little bit concerned about a nuclear reactor more than your deadlines. At least I would be. I probably wouldn't even be at work. But with that being the case, we see another person seemingly start praying. And we see the only character who, at least I initially recognized in this opening bit. This is, let me slide this back over. I'll slide over even further. This is the woman from the weather report all that time ago. She was the one who was covering the Todoroki flame flash. Like, when they shifted the climate, all working together, she was the lady that covered it. And that's a nice reference, call back to her. And she's specifically once again talking about the current wind is acting weird. And we see, once again, all about the wind, all about the weather. This is in the same spot. Meryl, take a look at this. The weather report Polyamic got posted online. May ride east of the jet stream and affect the weather in North America. Oh, yeah. So, see, I didn't even realize that in the live reaction. We can check it over on Patreon for as low as $1 a month, or check out here on YouTube for as low as $3 a month. Just become a Patreon member. But, with it being the case, this is a direct callback being made to that. And we see another child screaming out in hope. And we see that, once again, just due to the nature of things, it's like the far-off world, right? Like, I am not going to make any comparisons because I'm scared. But imagine you heard a tragedy that happened on the other side of the planet. You're going to feel bad. You're not going to like it. But like, it ain't happened to you though. So it's not going to hit the same. And that's the kind of scenario that we're seeing here. In Japan, you can literally see Bakugo standing here on the edge of UA, the chaos that's being caused by just Midoriya and Shigaraki clashing over here. Like, the chaos is rampant, but it's not like on a planetary scale. These people over here, they still have their own worlds, their own jobs to worry about. Like, bros, Martin, you gotta go eat. The food is ready, dog. And quite literally, the food is ready, dog. But with that being the case, you can see the glimmers of hope, those who are invested, those who care, as he says, oh man, I don't want All Might to fall. And speaking of falling, we see that a certain Bakugo Katsuki gets ready to fall. And he just drops. And we see Midoriya, brother's locked in. He's like, I see the method, I see the mentality. And with that being the case, Shigaraki looks on in shock as he essentially gets ignored for a second. Like, Midori just takes his eyes off him, and you see Shigaraki being like, dude, you do realize I'm like the final villain, right? Like, I have a million billion quirks I can hit you with while your back is turned. I'm not going to use any of them in this chapter in particular because, reasons. But, dude, why are you ignoring me? And you see, and admittedly, one thing I do kind of miss a little bit, I miss Shigaraki's more transcendent hair. Like, Hori's very clearly outlining it here. I think he outlines it for the rest of the chapter. Let me double check. I mean, somewhat. He does it, yeah, he fades it better here. This is just the one shot in the chapter that caught me off guard. Like, a lot of Shigaraki post-reawakening very much has his floofy transcendent hair, which I like more. This is much more solid line art, which, once again, don't get me wrong, it's hard to do. Like, what the effect that Hori does with Shigaraki's hair is so hard, the anime can't even replicate it. Like, I don't think so. Then again, I haven't watched too much of the anime, but from the scenes I've seen, the important ones, I think even the ones where his hair is supposed to start looking in that transcendent fluffy state, it's impossible to do because it's just a weird thing. It's a quirk that can only really be achieved within manga because it's a different medium than animation. So I can't even really get mad at Bones or anything like that for struggling to replicate it, if not being able to replicate it at all, because it's just a difficult thing to replicate. It'd be like that when it'd be like that, especially when it'd be like that. But we do get to see Midoriya turns, he reaches out, and as Bakugo dives down. And admittedly, their coordination is crazy on this one. Because, like, remember, I guess Midoriya does have danger sense, but Bakugo shouldn't activate it. We already know the students from UA don't actually activate danger sense for him. So Midoriya, while still holding Shigaraki, by the way, while still 100% holding Shigaraki, turns, barely glances. He doesn't even get to fully turn around before Bakugo reaches him. He reaches his left hand out, and I forget, I believe Midoriya is right-handed. He's either ambidextrous or right-handed. I don't think he's left-handed. So he reaches out with his non-dominant hand, grabs Bakugo, begins the spin cycle, which is crazy. Begins the spin cycle, immediately negates that backwards momentum to go into forwards momentum, swings Bakugo around in this beautiful image. I love how you can see Bakugo's explosions guiding him all the way around. He specifically stops the explosions with his right hand because he grabbed onto Midoriya's left. They swing, they lock eyes, and there's just no words. Not a single word spoken. Like, you know what needs to be done? I know what needs to be done, broski. And they both immediately lock in. Once again, I love Bakugo. I like Midoriya. And their dynamics is one of my favorite. Comparably, isn't my favorite. The thing is, though, really no. I'm trying to think of new gen duos like that really do be, or like rivals that compete like that. Like, heck, it's not really a common thing. It's not as common anymore. Like, I'm trying to think. I mean, Black Clover's Yuno and Asta, I think, still is my favorite new gen rival duo because they genuinely feel like rivals. I mean, Bakugo, ever since Midoriya got One for All, aka the entire series, has kind of just been playing catch up to Midoriya one way or another. Especially once Midoriya started to get a hang of One for All, so that's kind of been the thing. Shinra and Arthur from Shinra and Arthur. Yeah, no, it is Shinra. My brain was getting so confused there. Shinra and Arthur from Fire Force, they have a rivalry, but I wouldn't necessarily say that. They're much more like homies that tend to fight each other a little bit. What other comparisons can I really think of? Because, like, I wouldn't consider Megami and Itadori rivals from JJK. That's just not a thing. I wouldn't consider... I mean, Senku doesn't really have a rival in Dr. Stone. No, there is, like, the Naruto Sasuke dynamic is very specifically emulated in My Hero Academia and Black Clover. That's about it. Sakamoto Days doesn't have one. Blue Box doesn't have one. Like, I don't know. There's no real, like, linking comparison that I can see from anywhere. At least in the case of the rivals dynamic. So, the only one this is beneath for me, just because of the power imbalance between these two, or the only one that's above these two, because of the power imbalance being better shown as a power balance in another series, would be Yuno and Asta, just because I think their dynamics a bit better because of the equality between the two. But of course, you see these two lock eyes and engage. And one thing I will admit, this isn't a critique from me, this is a critique from my friend, because I was maybe being a little bit too soft on the chapter at first. The fact that Shigaraki does nothing here is kind of weird. Like, don't get me wrong, I clearly see bro is bound in Black Whip, and obviously you can tell by how Midoriya's kind of been handling Shigaraki really and all that to Midoriya, which is crazy to think about. He's just very, very bulky and durable. But, like, you're telling me he doesn't have, like, a laser beam quirk he can fire from his mouth, he doesn't have any eye lasers, like, nothing. Bro has the original All for One. You're telling me he doesn't have any quirks that would help in this scenario? And you mean to tell me he doesn't think that the thing that he's been waiting literally his entire life for is worth intervening on? Like, not even a little bit? Like, don't get me wrong. Obviously, a lot of his hatred of All Might comes from indoctrination, right? But this is a very fundamental part of him, as you'll see later on in this very chapter. So his genuine lack of action here does feel a little bit contrived. It's what I'm going to say is one of the biggest critiques I have for this chapter, and why this chapter does feel a little bit underwhelming, even though I don't necessarily see, based on how Hori set up this chapter, I don't see really how it could go any other way. And I'm just hoping there's a follow-up to this chapter that makes me like this more in retrospect. But, of course, you see these two lock in, and the second user brings in, like, bring, ayo boyo. If you use gear shift again, the kickback will be even stronger. Doing that would mean giving up victory. Which is technically valid, right? Like, Midoriya was already feeling the repercussions from gear shift. And sure, he's holding off Shigaraki well enough. Like, he literally dragged Shigaraki back into the air after they literally fell to the ground, off screen. And obviously, Shigaraki is bound in Black Whip. He's clearly not doing much of anything. But the more whiplash that Midoriya puts on himself through the utilization of gear shift likely will not help him. Especially since while he's been beating up, he's been pummeling Shigaraki. I mean, look at bro. He doesn't seem at all worse for wear. He has no lasting damage on him. So sure, like, Midoriya's in control of the battle, but like, Shigaraki will clearly win the stamina battle. He literally has multiple quirks to help him win the stamina battle. He also has the quirk Singularity, something that seems to have fallen away a little bit, but like, worst comes to worst, he can just adapt and evolve even more. Meanwhile, Midoriya, he is kind of not, he's on a soft time limit. Like, obviously Midoriya's stamina is much better than it was when he was initially using One For All, but the constant utilization of gear shift would be extremely dangerous for him. And once again, if Midoriya fails here, if he falls, All Might be forgotten. All Might will perish one way or another. Everyone's going to perish one way or another. Because unlike All For One, Shigaraki doesn't care about any sort of system. In fact, the opposite. He wants to tear down the system that propagated All Might. And All Might will be the first one in that system. So realistically, the saving of All Might should be secondary to the saving of the world, considering Shigaraki will literally go around on his perfect cell type beat and just terrorize everything in existence, because he'll assume everything in existence liked All Might. And the second user does have a point, but unfortunately, one, he forgets the kind of series he's in, and two, he forgets who the current wielder of One For All is. But he very quickly gets a reminder when the All Might vestige appears next to him. And we see, he looks at it, but then he immediately softens, because he's like, this man may as well be bro's dad. Like, for all intents and purposes, All Might is Midoriya's father. Sure, he very likely does have a real dad, but we have never met him. Not in Vigilantes, not in any side manga, or not in any light novels, nothing. We've seen that man never. I don't even think does he have a name? I think he has a name. But is that a fanon name or a real name? I think like Hiyazashi Midoriya. But I'm not even sure if that's like a real name. I don't think Hori has mentioned Midoriya's dad ever. Ever. So All Might is this man's father. And even if you excuse all the father symbolism, right? You may just say, oh, that's fandom push. That's not really a thing. All Might is his mentor. All Might is the reason that Midoriya is the way he is right now. All Might is the driving factor behind the very world itself. And thusly, upon seeing this legend almost join him in this false reality, he softens and immediately quiets his critiques. He's like, fine, I'll watch you do it. But just take what I said. Don't forget about it. Don't forget about it. And we see that Bakugo actually gets a little bit of stabilization from Midoriya on the rotation as they spin around and gear shift activates perfectly. So Midoriya can launch Bakugo towards All Might and All For One. Very impressive. Once again, it goes to show not only their connection and understanding of each other as warriors, but also it goes to show like their immaculate aim. Like, the fact that Midoriya, like, just raw pitched him. Like, just straight, just threw bro at the best he could. And he aimed in the perfect direction. Like, realize, if Bakugo is, like, 1 centimeter off, maybe not 1 centimeter, but if he was, like, just at a slightly different angle, he would have flown right past All Might and All For One later on in this chapter. So their aim being so immaculate, chef's kiss. That's good on them. That's very good on them. But we see Midoriya fires, and the fire proceeds to go. He literally breaks the sound barrier here. You can tell by the sonic boom. And he's getting closer and closer. But we see Shigaraki. This is the in-narrative excuse. This is the verbal in-narrative excuse. And the entanglement of Black Web is the physical narrative excuse. Where Shigaraki explains why he's not interfering. He's like, he won't make it in time. You know it, right? The All Might inside you used to just be a formless silhouette. They don't appear like their true form when they're alive, right? But now, he's starting to look like his real self, isn't he? So, this is admittedly something I'm a little bit confused on. I think he can't see it. I don't think he can. Because he's asking the question. He's asking the question, he's not saying it. In the Raws, in the loose translation of the Raws, I thought Shigaraki was like literally capable of seeing the vestiges behind Midoriya. Like they were a physical thing he could interact with, or not interact with, or at least like perceive. But this does seem to be a thing where Shigaraki's like, nah, I have something very similar to what you got, bro. I know how the vestige world works to some degree. And thusly, when bro about to go, you about to see him turn real physical up in there, ain't he? So Shigaraki playing the mind games and also not interfering because he's like, whatever. Doesn't really matter. He'll fall. It is a bit a side of overconfidence, I will admit. Once again, Shigaraki's, as much as he's matured, as much of a better character as he's become, he's not beyond his arrogance. He's not beyond his stupidity. Like, him believing that fate is set and that there's no way Bakugo could reach in time. You can definitely say it's a bit naive, it's a bit contrived, but hey, it'd be like that when it'd be like that, especially when it'd be like that. And it is interesting, right? All Might incarnates in One For All, not as his prime self, not as his young self, but the self that is most true, the self that is most recent. Presumably, this vestige version of All Might would still even have his stomach scar on him. He fell as he did in this state of pure agony. Though admittedly, he is cleaned up in the vestige world, which is nice enough. And then it goes to show, once again, the big reason why it seems that all the One For All users appear pretty much in their primes or relatively young is because they all fell in their primes or relatively young. That's when All For One got to them, or even just the strain of One For All executed them. That's what ended up happening, and that's crazy. All Might's the first elder vestige, which is so wild. But we see that Shigaraki is grinning and cheesing as he says, the end of the man who brought dreams to the world will bring reality back. And that is kind of a bar. And it's true, right? Because that is what All Might was. He was the start of dreams. He gave birth to endless dreamers. He gave birth to Midoriya. Not literally, obviously, but like Midoriya's mentality, his lifestyle, his determination, all that is born of All Might. And ultimately, if All Might does fall here, the hope of those dreamers, even if it is fleeting, it will just perish if he were to actually fall. All For One not reacting here, I can actually excuse even more than Shigaraki, though. Because, like, he's not paying attention. He's not paying attention. He doesn't have danger sense or nothing. And I don't even notice, but Bakugo's still alive. Because remember how far away he was relative to UA. And we see that Bakugo, he zooms. Midoriya feels that hope. And the wind does blow on. And we see someone's clenched fist. Someone's breathing. I wanted to keep you from getting slain. I searched for a way to change things. Within thoughts is a sort of energy. I believe that now. Energy striving from a certain future. Energy from wishing. Can the flap of a butterfly's wings in Brazil really bring about a hurricane in Texas? The butterfly effect. Someone's prayers. Why did twerp like you get that kind of power? You got All Might to recognize you. Why was it me who put an end to All Might? Boom! All Might gets saved by the power of hope, the wishing power, and the fate-bending ability of One For All. To the point where he is snagged directly out the grip of All For One, and All For One's arms will literally get blown off. Bro got done dastardly and diabolically by the end of it all. And we see The vestige has burst back into its original self. The fate of the original world has been altered. And All Might is saved. I can't tell. It does kind of look like All Might lost an arm here. But I think that's just a weird blur art thing. And his arm could just be like behind. It could just be an angle thing. Like from this perspective, it may look like my forearm doesn't exist. But it does, clearly. So like, even with this being the case, I do think All Might is just fine. Well, not just fine. Obviously, he's beaten up badly, but he is saved. And we see Bakugo declare, "We'll win this!" So, the big thing is, right, I kind of was hoping that this would be extended just a little bit. That's my one major complaint with the chapter, and another content creator over on TikTok, by the way. If you want more of That Guy with the Pencil content, go check out the TikTok. That Guy with the TikTok. I should have just made That Guy with the Pencil, but I don't draw, like, at all over there. But, well, a little bit. But with that being the case, another creator brought up this point. It does seem a bit too easy. No interference from Shigaraki or All For One. All For One I can kind of excuse. Once again, he wasn't paying attention. He probably wasn't expecting. It's like, look at this. This thing over here in the distance is probably UA. This is All For One, all the way over here. Like, it makes sense that he wasn't paying enough attention. He doesn't have, like, psychic abilities or anything like that. He doesn't have a danger sense. Shigaraki not interfering feels a little bit contrived. I will give that. That feels a little bit contrived. But once again, he is physically bound, and he also believed that there was no way that Bakugo was making it in time. So, him not engaging, him simply wanting to watch the end of All Might, kind of makes sense. So this is, in the end, a W chapter. I am hoping we do get sort of an extended chase scene next chapter, where All For One just tries to chase down All Might, and ultimately he gets consumed by his own revenge. Like, let's say Bakugo doesn't even have to fight him. He just has to stall him out. And we see All For One just continue to reverse, until it's literally out of existence. He just fades from reality. And that's the kind of end I hope for All For One. He doesn't get the dignity of, like, an active end. He simply, by chasing his sick, twisted desires, ends up destroying himself. That would be a nice end to him. But overall, I do say this is a W chapter. If you made it all the way to the end of this vigil, please do me a favor. I literally just had a pencil out. I keep misplacing my pencils. This is what happens when you have so many pencils, when you're that guy with one. But if you made it all the way to the end of this review, please leave the Savior of Dreams. I need to make shorter passwords. The Savior of Dreams in the comment section down below. I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Please remember to leave a like, share, comment, and subscribe. And make sure you hit that little notification bell so you do not miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also, I do have a Patreon down below where you can support for as low as $1 a month. You get things like exclusive videos, early content, and more. You also now become a member of the channel for as low as $3 a month to get the same perks and more. Some of those perks include the live reaction to this very chapter. Now, I want to thank you guys so much for watching once again, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is That Guy with the Pencil, writing off. I'd like to give a thank you to our $3 members for Connor Plays, Red Wolf 4765, and Burp Skills. I'd like to give another very big thank you to our $5 patrons, Sean, Midnight Gemlord, Kevin, and Demex LND. And I'd like to give a fat, hefty thank you to our $10 patrons, Robbie Uchiha, Joaquin, and Idemokami. And I'd like to give another hefty thank you to our $25 member, Alex Ice Rose. And another big fat scrumdiddlyumptious thank you to our $25 patrons, Igneal and Calvin Elder.